All right, good stuff. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out for the last trio of sessions of the day. This session is called the IDAS Dating Game. Is there a match out there for you? As David said, my name is Sean Deuby. I have a starting question. How many of you ever worked with the IBM VM operating system? Ever worked on it, maintained it, anything like that? A couple people willing to raise their hands, not so much. So one thing, that means you're old. But that's okay, because I'm old too. The reason I bring it up is because there's an old joke that would go around the VM operating system, folks. It went like this, if I can get it right. If it's there and you can touch it, it's real. If it's there and you can't touch it, it's virtual. If it's not there and you can't touch it, it's stolen. The modern addendum I would add to that joke is, if it's not there, you can't touch it, and you're still paying for it monthly, it's a SaaS app. So the genesis of this presentation came, I've done a lot of stuff over the years, and I put together Intel's Active Directory and ran it and stuff like that. But the last 4 years I spent as a technology journalist, as David was saying, Windows IT Pro. And I thought it would be good here. IDAS has been around for a while. In internet terms. I thought it would be good to have just kind of a review of where IDAS is today, where it stands. So I'm not a real analyst like Mr. Diodati over there, but so what I had to do is I had to kind of reach out to my connections, a number of connections that are executives of IDAS companies, and ask them some questions. You know, what they thought of where the state of the market was, what was working, what was a little bit slower. In my day job, I'm a solutions architect for Edgile, and I do IDAS implementations. So for this session, I kind of took their thoughts and kind of rolled into my own thoughts into it as well for what I'm about to show you guys. Agenda-wise, pretty straightforward. What's the appeal of IDAS? What's IDAS adoption looking like right now? Some IDAS use cases, and a random collection of futures and thoughts. Now, at the time we put this session together, it seemed like the dating game was a great idea. I'm not quite so sure it's a great idea anymore, and for those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, either due to age or where you were at the time, the dating game was a very popular TV show in the 70s. Where a young woman would stand up behind a partition, and there would be three eligible bachelors on stools, and the woman would ask them various questions, and each one try to answer it in their own way, and she would pick one, and yay, you know. It was very popular, and a number of future celebrities went through there. So if you're bored by the session, you can at least look at the pictures and see if you can pin who the celebrities are. There's your first quiz. So just for a level set, very briefly, I just wanted to talk about IDAS, Identity as a Service, Identity Management as a Service, in a nutshell. I think everybody probably understands it pretty well, but just very briefly, we have on-premises that we all know and love, and the environment that we've been working with for about the last 15 or more years, what people call Identity 1.0. You've got your identity sources, Active Directory, maybe other identity sources, SQL, LDAP, that sort of thing, and the addition of a new component called an identity bridge, very aptly named, because what it's doing is it's taking those Identity 1.0 protocols, Kerberos, NTLM, LDAP, and it's transforming them into Identity 2.0 protocols for, in this particular case, for an IDAS service, for Identity as a Service. So Identity 2.0, the identity bridge bridges the traditional enterprise with Identity as a Service. So with Identity as a Service, you can minimize the overhead that you have on premises to handle all of these connections. The best known use case for Identity as a Service is to simplify your SaaS applications. All of your SaaS providers, Office 365, could be Salesforce, could be Box, could be Workday, anything like that, a whole bunch. In addition, you can also use it to simplify perhaps business-to-business, B2B partner. With that, your client, your user on premises, even though he's on premises, accesses a simple user portal. So with this simple user portal, they get a nice little logo. They get a smorgasbord of the apps that they're authorized to access. They click on it, magic happens, and they're logged on. Very nice user experience, very handy. In addition, IDaaS is developing many other capabilities as well. One particular one is that I'm fond of is the ability to take internal web applications that are not visible externally to the company and publish them to this user portal. This is what Pam Dingle calls the SaaSification of the enterprise. The beauty of it being is, if you're there on premises, it looks just like you're accessing it. It's just a simple web portal, but it works equally well if you're in a coffee shop, or you're in your hotel room, or if you're in the back of a presentation not paying any attention to what I'm saying. So it all looks the same. Essentially, that's it. So very quickly, why is IDaaS popular? Some of these are probably pretty obvious. Some may not be quite so obvious. Speed of deployment. You can get an IDaaS solution up and working in a matter of hours, or if you have a complicated solution, a matter of days, but very, very quickly. As you can see from the previous diagram, it greatly simplifies web single sign-on. That is probably its single most popular asset. Because it's a subscription, you pay as you grow. In other words, almost all of the SaaS vendors provide a free trial or an unlimited length of time, but limited by users and the number of applications that, that it supports. This is what is commonly known as the drug dealer model. So you get to kick the tires, see how you like it, and then if you choose to adopt it, it's very simple as you adopt it, to simply pay more and more as you have more users. It gives you increased security and control over SaaS applications. This is the infamous shadow IT problem. How many of you are familiar with the term shadow IT? So yeah, reasonable amount, right. It's basically when you have business units or departments or something outside of central IT that they have a real business need to use SaaS applications, and they're not willing to wait for slow, turgid central IT to get things going. So they do it on their own. They get a purchase order, a credit card, and off they go. And for some aspects of it, that's great. The problem that you have to worry about, of course, is they'll provision accounts into it, but they very rarely keep track of the full account lifecycle to deprovision accounts out of it. So you get this accumulation of stale accounts that are a great security risk. IDaaS provides a rapid rollout of new capabilities. Because it's released to web, you don't have to do anything. They just magically light up. You get something in your inbox and says, hey, now you can do this. It may be an extra cost. It may be the same part of the service. And rapid, so Microsoft's Azure Active Directory is rolling out new features or improving existing features on a 3-week cycle. So it is a job just keeping up with the new features and understanding what's happening as they're rolling out new capabilities. And IDaaS is very mobile friendly. It's mobile both by device friendly and by location friendly. So you could be on your notebook, you could have an app on a tablet, you could have an app on a phone. It all works the same. And again, as I said, because it's a web service, it doesn't matter where you are. So now I will talk about the IDaaS adoption lifecycle here in California. I apologize, that was really bad. But it was also a hint as to who we're looking at there. So the IDaaS adoption lifecycle, this is kind of mirrors my growth in understanding it. The first reaction is not only no, but hell no. I'm not going to put my, the jewels to the corporation out in the cloud somewhere. And then as you study about it a little bit more and you learn about federation, you realize, oh, our passwords can stay on premises and will be authenticated still here locally. All right, that starts to sound quite a bit better. And then you read about what it can do and you go, oh, well, gosh, we can get all these capabilities. We can get them this quickly and it's going to cost us how much to do it? And as we get more used to it, we can streamline our infrastructure. We can start getting rid of all those connections that we have such a hard time maintaining. And if you're one of the unlucky ones, you have number 4, which is, okay, our security isn't quite as good as we thought it was. So to my knowledge, I have not heard of any breaches of IDaaS providers. So what kind of profiles do we have for IDaaS adopters? In 2013, it was mostly small and medium businesses. Generally, technology companies or very technology-oriented companies that were willing to take risks to get that edge. In 2015, it's pretty much all company sizes, all vertical markets across the board. Now, that doesn't mean that every company's adopted at the same pace. If you look at it by company size, there's a definite curve to it, and this is something I christened infrastructure inertia. So the amount of infrastructure in a corporation, the more it is, the harder it is to move and do anything. New businesses have no infrastructure, and they generally just go cloud only right from the start. There's no reason to have any kind of an on-premises infrastructure unless the new business requires some specialized application that is not available as a service. Then they have to get some server and land it. Next one up, SMBs. SMBs, small and medium businesses. They have an existing infrastructure, maybe not too large, but what they also have is generally one very overworked IT pro generalist that's peanut buttered across everything that they have to do, backups, hardware, clients, everything like that. So web services is a godsend for somebody like that, and IDaaS is even more so. So it is seeing active adoption right now. And finally, as we get up to the enterprise, obviously enterprises have a substantial infrastructure, a complex infrastructure, a complex IAM infrastructure. And the good news is that enterprises are adopting IDaaS. They're just taking longer at it, as they do with everything. Their processes are slower, and their use cases are more complicated, but they are also actively adopting IDaaS. So if you were to look at a company and come up with some ideas or just that would help drive IDaaS adoption, these are what all of my contacts more or less all agreed upon. The first is tech savviness for IT in a company. If IT is perceived as being a value add rather than a cost center, they're helping drive the company forward, aggressively adopting things, they are going to be looking at IDaaS. Another is if a company picks up a major SaaS app for adoption, a Salesforce, a Workday, something like that, Office 365, and now they discover, oh, we have to have single sign-on to make this work. I didn't realize we could just buy the licenses, but now we have this to take care of. And that's a very popular use case. Another angle on this is user savviness, user technology savviness, or SaaS app savviness, and kind of what comes with that is bring your own device. So they're the ones that are doing the shadow IT. They're looking for new solutions, and they will drive the need for something like this back to IT, saying, look, we really want this because it will make our life easier. If the company values the importance of user experience, that's another IDaaS driver. So to help you understand that, look at it from the opposite point of view. If you have more of a traditional industry, commodity, chemicals manufacturing, something like that, they are some of the slowest to look at this kind of technology. But if the user experience is important, they're paying attention to it. And finally, security. One of my connections said, every CISO that I talk to already knows all about IDaaS and its value proposition. So, and you will never guess this one correctly, so I'll just tell you. This is former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm on the dating game in 1978. So if any of you are from Michigan, there you go, with significant hair. Popular use cases, and you'll see I'm telling the same story and sort of different angles on here. Active SaaS usage. If you have a lot of users that want to use it, it's a great solution. Security-oriented companies that want to get a hold of shadow IT. And there are tools out there to show you just how bad your shadow IT is is used to help drive you into this kind of adoption. These three are interesting, though. Large unskilled workforces with high turnover. So one of my connections talked about a company, it's a retailer, and they have thousands of stores across the US, and they sell inexpensive goods. And it's a relatively unskilled workforce of 100,000 users, and they have a 50% turnover every year. So what they need is a couple of simple SaaS apps for performance reviews or to look at their pay stub, and they need a really streamlined onboarding and offboarding process, and they use an IDaaS provider for that. Another one is companies that have large vendor or temp user populations. They'll put the temp users in the cloud directory, leave the full-time employees on premises, and use single sign-on for the employees up into web SSO. And here's another interesting one, companies with password reset problems. So another of my connections talked about a company that took the whole month of December off each year, and then in the beginning of January, for the first couple of weeks, they had a huge spike in help desk calls because apparently everybody forgot their password. So they had to actually hire temp employees for the first 2 weeks of January to help everybody get their password reset. Their implementation was to use a web-based self-service password reset portal from an IDaaS provider. Places where IDaaS is really not quite ready for prime time yet or having slower adoption and challenges are those large, complex IAM environments. Essentially, in most circumstances, IDaaS is kind of a bolt-on to an existing infrastructure, and there's not a whole lot of integration going on right now. You'll see connectors to on-premises resources or maybe virtual directory servers to help with the integration, but there's still a lot of work to be done there. Same with heavily regulated businesses, slower to adopt, many regulations, what they can put in the cloud, what they can't put in the cloud. And kind of a corollary of that is the governance that is required. Most IDaaS solutions, with certain notable exceptions like SailPoint, are light on governance and workflow. This is just kind of a smorgasbord of the major IDaaS vendors that are out there. I guess the only thing that I would say, and it's certainly not all of them, but it's what I grabbed, I would say the one thing to note is some of these have been out there for quite a while, and at least 2 of them have been out there for a year or less. So the market is still by no means, fully mature. Some futures, the vendors are becoming more alike. When this market was younger, the companies would enter the market based on what their strength was. And so they looked very different, and some had capabilities and others simply didn't have them at all. As with a little more time spent, they're all coming to have similar capabilities. There will be plenty of differentiation, but they will all have a set of table stakes for capabilities. You could see the way a product matures. So for example, one vendor will have very strong identity bridge that's very flexible, and then build a cloud service out of it, and then start to build other capabilities around it as an example. Internet of Things connectivity becomes a factor. I won't say it's going to be a major factor, but it's going to start showing up in product data sheets. Deeper integration into on-premises IAM. They're going to be working on making this situation better. On-premises app publishing. So it will be identity bridges will get better as part of this integration of diving into the existing environment. They will become, right now, identity bridges are pretty single purpose. They'll become more of a Swiss Army knife of capabilities to more deeply integrate into on-premises environment. Enhanced mobility management, the ability to push certificates down to mobile clients or security policies from an IDaaS service. And this is interesting, and it was, we heard Alex Simons talk about it and a few others talk about it. Better analytics to provide real-time access management or dynamic access control. I believe Andre talked about it also. The idea of there is so much data flowing through these IDaaS solutions, using analytics to figure out what's going on. looking for bad actors, and instead of sending an email alert to an administrative mailbox, actually taking some kind of remediation. A couple other random bits. Only a small, and this, I've seen this across spoken different ways. But what I see is only a small percentage of SaaS vendors supporting identity standards still, as Ian was talking about this morning. In my informal survey of several IDaaS users' portals, several IDaaS vendors' portals, 2,500 apps, something like that, and about somewhere between 6 and 10% actually supported federated single sign-on. Everything else was password form fill, which is what drives the ugly band-aid called password vaulting. If you're not familiar with password vaulting, you log on to your IDaaS portal and you want to go to a website that doesn't support federation, requires a user ID and password. Your first time there, the service will say, would you like me to save this user ID and password? Like LastPass. If you don't know what LastPass is, go look up LastPass. There's your homework. And then it will save it. So the next time you want to log on to the SaaS application, it will replay it for you and you get single sign-on in a really kind of spit and baling wire sort of a way. Provisioning, the other half of making this happen. You can't authenticate without a user ID. So provisioning to the SaaS apps is still not where it needs to be. And we have an illustrious panel coming up after this to talk about the leading provisioning standard, SCIM. Right now, they're one-off solutions, and that just can't keep going on as we continue to explode in growth. Office 365 is a huge driver for SaaS adoption. Most of the IDaaS executives I talked to said that a lot of their business was Office 365. If they do adopt IDaaS, most companies that have existing federation take a balanced hybrid approach of it. They don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and just go all the way out to nothing but IDaaS. They will start and take some of the low-hanging fruit, give it a try, and hang on to reduce the number of federated trusts that they have with their on-premises systems, but they still keep some, and we'll see what happens with that over time. One of my connections said, basically, the floodgates are open. People, they're seeing work on IDaaS across the board. It's approaching mainstream acceptance. The products are continuing to mature. This release to web thing, trying to keep up with this is a chore. This is my term, and I really like this vision or this feeling of it. People are not rushing wholesale to the cloud, but I would say the center of gravity is shifting very slowly to the cloud. So for me, that's a great way of thinking about it. You put something there, it's tending to roll in that direction. But to reiterate what's been said many times, it's vital that SaaS vendors, adopt identity standards. And it's the people with the purchase orders that they'll pay attention to. It's not us up here on stage that they'll pay attention to. Super, super important. That's it. I'm done right on time. If you see who that one is there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them for the few seconds we have.
Yeah, I think we have time for one question. Raise your hand. I'll run the microphone to you if you have any.
Hi. I saw you mention business to business. Where does business to consumer fall in this picture?
Business to consumer is not so far along right now. I don't have a lot of interaction with business to consumer, but that's still a nascent capability in a lot of circumstances.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.